Most men lose respect long before they lose the relationship. And they don't even realize when it happens. It doesn't happen during a big argument. It doesn't happen when she walks away. It happens the first time you start over-explaining who you are. The first time you feel the need to defend your intentions. The first time you panic because she misunderstood you. In that moment, something subtle shifts. You stop standing in your truth. And you start negotiating your value. Here's the hard truth. The more you try to convince a woman of your worth, the less she feels it. Because attraction is not built on explanations. It's built on certainty. And today, we're going to talk about why intelligent men never feel the need to constantly explain themselves. And what changes in your life when you finally stop. Welcome to the Stoic Love Wisdom channel. This is where we share lessons about love, real-life experiences and tips for building strong relationships. In today's video, I will share with you, why do smart men never explain or justify their actions to women? These may be things you have never thought of. If you are looking for a deeper understanding of love and how to develop relationships, don't miss this video. Before watching the video, find a quiet space and put on your headphones to feel every word I am about to share. Relax and enjoy this journey with me. Are you ready to start this journey? Let's begin. Part 1. Why intelligent men never explain or defend themselves to women. Let me tell you something most men learn too late. The moment you start explaining yourself too much to a woman, you've already stepped out of your power. I didn't always know this. There was a time when I believed love meant transparency at all costs. If she misunderstood me, I explained. If she felt upset, I defended my intentions. If she doubted me, I reassured her. I thought that was maturity. It wasn't. It was fear. Fear of being misjudged. Fear of losing her. Fear of not being enough. And fear makes a man talk too much. The difference between clarifying and defending. Let's be clear about something. A grounded man can clarify. But an insecure man defends. Clarifying is calm. Defending is emotional. Clarifying sounds like, I hear you. That wasn't my intention. Defending sounds like, that's not what I meant. You're twisting my words. Let me explain. Do you feel the difference? One comes from stability. The other comes from a need to be validated. And women, especially emotionally intelligent women, can sense that difference instantly. When you over-explain, you signal doubt. Here's what many men don't understand. The more you explain yourself, the more it looks like you're unsure of your own actions. A man who stands firmly in his decisions does not rush to justify them. If I decide to go to the gym instead of texting all night, I don't owe a 10-minute explanation. If I choose to focus on work for a week, I don't need a speech to defend my priorities. When you over-explain, what you're subconsciously saying is, please approve of my choices. And that is dangerous. Because attraction dies the moment a man seeks approval instead of living by his values. The Stoic principle, control what you can. The Stoics understood something most modern men forget. You cannot control how someone interprets you. You can control your actions, your tone, your integrity. But you cannot control her emotions, her projections, her assumptions. When a woman says, you don't care about me, an inexperienced man panics. He starts listing proof. I texted you. I called you. I did this for you. He tries to fight her perception. A Stoic man understands something deeper. He knows. Her statement reflects her emotional state, not his worth. So instead of defending, he might calmly say, I'm sorry you feel that way. And then he watches. Because if a woman constantly misinterprets your actions, no amount of explanation will fix it. Only alignment will. Why intelligent men avoid emotional courtrooms? Most arguments between men and women turn into courtrooms. She becomes the prosecutor. You become the defendant. She presents emotional evidence. You present logical arguments. And you think if you just explain clearly enough, you'll win. But here's the truth. In emotional court, logic never wins. Because she is not asking for facts. She is expressing feelings. And when you respond with defense instead of presence, you escalate the dynamic. An intelligent man refuses to enter the courtroom. He doesn't debate his character every time someone questions it. If a woman consistently puts you in a position where you must defend your integrity, that is not communication. That is a power imbalance. Over-explaining is often trauma speaking. Let me be honest. Men who over-explain usually grew up needing to justify themselves. Maybe to parents. Maybe to authority figures. Maybe to previous partners. So they learned. If I just explain better, I won't be abandoned. But women are not your childhood judges. And love is not a courtroom. If you feel the urge to defend yourself intensely, pause. Ask yourself. Am I explaining because clarity is needed, or because I'm afraid of losing her? That question will change your life. Silence is not weakness. There's a misconception. Many men think that not explaining makes them cold. Not true. There is a difference between silence rooted in ego and silence rooted in confidence. Ego silence says, I won't explain because I don't care. Confident silence says, I won't explain because I trust who I am. That energy feels different. A woman may test you. She may question you. Sometimes unconsciously. She wants to see. Does this man crumble under emotional pressure? Or does he remain steady? A man who panics and overclarifies fails that test. A man who listens calmly and responds minimally, passes. Not because he dominates. But because he is centered. The attraction of certainty. Women are naturally drawn to emotional certainty. Not arrogance. Not dominance. Certainty. When you constantly defend yourself, you appear uncertain. When you stand by your choices calmly, you radiate stability. Think about it. Have you ever seen a truly powerful man over-explain himself? Leaders don't hold press conferences for every opinion someone has about them. They act. They move. They let results speak. In relationships, the same principle applies. Your consistency over time is your explanation. Your behavior is your defense. Your character is your proof. When explanation is necessary. Now let's be mature. There are moments when explanation is appropriate. If you hurt her unintentionally. If there was miscommunication. If clarity genuinely improves understanding. But explanation should be short, calm, and contained. Not emotional. Not desperate. Not layered with, please don't leave. A strong explanation sounds like, I understand why that upset you. That wasn't my intention. Here's what I meant. Then silence. No speech. No begging for validation. You speak once. And you let your behavior align with your words. The deep truth most men avoid. Here is the uncomfortable reality. If a woman constantly requires you to defend your character, she may not truly trust you. And trust cannot be argued into existence. It is either built through consistency, or it is absent. No explanation can manufacture trust. Only time and integrity can. And if after both of those, she still doubts you, the intelligent man doesn't fight harder. He evaluates alignment. Because a relationship should not feel like a job interview you must keep passing. Final reflection of Part 1. When I stopped explaining myself unnecessarily, something interesting happened. The arguments decreased. The tension softened. The dynamic shifted. Not because I became cold, but because I became grounded. I no longer needed to prove. And when a man no longer needs to prove, he becomes calm. And calm is magnetic. Remember this. You are not responsible for managing every emotion a woman feels about you. You are responsible for your integrity. If you live with clarity, discipline, and emotional control, your life will speak louder than your explanations ever could. And the right woman will not need constant defense from you. She will observe. She will feel your steadiness. And she will relax into it. Because in a world full of reactive men, the quiet one who stands firm is rare. Love, like a mirror that reflects ourselves. When you learn to love, you are also learning to look back at yourself. What are your strengths? What are the wounds that need to be healed? And understanding yourself will help you understand the other person more deeply. That is also the reason I share on this channel, to help you see love as a journey to nurture your soul. If you find these things meaningful, click like to spread that value. And if this is your first time coming to the channel, don't forget to click subscribe with the notification bell, so we can always accompany each other in the next lessons. Leave a comment below, share your true feelings after listening to this part. Who knows, your little story may touch the heart of someone in need. Now, let's continue on the next part of this journey. Part 2. Why women test, and why intelligent men don't react. Emotional pressure and the Stoic response. There's something most men misunderstand about women. Women don't always test you consciously. But they do test your emotional stability. Not because they want to dominate you. Not because they want to create drama. But because instinctively, they are wired to evaluate strength. Not physical strength. Emotional strength. And emotional strength is revealed under pressure. The nature of emotional testing. Let me explain something clearly. When a woman questions you repeatedly. When she challenges your decisions. When she says things that slightly provoke you. She is not always attacking you. Sometimes she is asking, without words. Are you stable? Can you handle tension? Will you break if I push? A reactive man sees confrontation. A grounded man sees calibration. She is measuring your nervous system. Why reaction equals weakness? The moment you react emotionally, you give away something valuable. You give away your center. Think about it. If someone can trigger you with words, that means your emotional state is externally controlled. And a man who is externally controlled cannot lead. He cannot protect. He cannot create safety. And safety is what women subconsciously search for. When you react, raise your voice, defend aggressively, explain frantically, you signal. I am shaken. Even if your words are logical. Even if you are technically right. Emotional reactivity cancels logical correctness. The psychology behind her push. Many men assume women test to manipulate. That's a shallow interpretation. The deeper truth is biological and psychological. Women invest more emotionally in relationships. They are naturally more attuned to shifts in energy. So when they feel uncertainty, they probe. They poke. They question. They want to know. If chaos comes, will this man remain calm? Because life brings chaos. Stress. Financial pressure. Family conflict. Uncertainty. If you cannot handle her emotional wave, how will you handle life's storms? That's the unconscious calculation happening. The man who fails the test. The average man responds like this. She, why didn't you call me last night? Him, defensive tone. I told you I was busy. Why are you making it a big deal? I explained already. His voice tightens. His breathing changes. His ego activates. He thinks he's defending logic. But she's observing composure. And he just failed. Not because he was wrong, but because he lost control of his state. The man who passes without trying. Now watch the difference. She, why didn't you call me last night? Him, calm, steady. I was focused on something important. Silence. No over-explanation. No defensive energy. No irritation. Just grounded certainty. If she pushes again. She, it feels like you don't prioritize me. He doesn't argue facts. He says. I understand that's how it felt. And he stays calm. Do you see what happened? He didn't surrender his position. He didn't apologize unnecessarily. He didn't escalate. He stayed centered. That center is power. Why intelligent men don't chase emotional approval? Here's the deeper layer. When you rush to defend yourself, you are chasing emotional approval. You are saying, please don't think badly of me. But a man rooted in his values understands something critical. Not everyone will interpret you correctly. And that's okay. If you know your intentions were clean, your actions aligned, your integrity intact, you don't need a performance to prove it. The need to be understood by everyone is a sign of insecurity. The ability to stay misunderstood calmly is strength. Emotional leadership versus emotional submission. A relationship needs polarity. Not dominance. Not control. Polarity. If both people react emotionally at the same time, the relationship becomes unstable. Someone must regulate the energy. Intelligent men understand this. When she becomes emotional, he becomes grounded. Not cold. Grounded. He lowers his voice instead of raising it. He slows down instead of speeding up. He listens instead of interrupting. And here's the paradox. The less he fights to prove himself, the more credible he becomes. The hidden danger of over-defending. Let me tell you something most men won't admit. When you constantly defend yourself, you slowly train her to question you more. Because she learns. If I push, he reacts. And reaction is stimulating. Drama creates intensity. Intensity can feel like passion. But it's unstable. When you stop reacting, you remove the reward loop. Now, calm becomes the norm. And over time, she relaxes. Because your nervous system becomes predictable. And predictability in masculine energy creates security. Silence as psychological ground. Silence is uncomfortable for insecure men. They rush to fill it. They talk. Explain. Justify. But silence is powerful when used correctly. After you state your position once, you don't need to repeat it 5 times. If she disagrees, let her sit with it. If she misunderstands, clarify once. Then stop. Because when you keep explaining, you lower your perceived certainty. And certainty is magnetic. This is not about ego. Let's remove ego from this conversation. This isn't about refusing to communicate. This isn't about dismissing her emotions. This isn't about winning. It's about emotional self-mastery. A Stoic man does not suppress feelings. He governs them. He feels irritation, but doesn't explode. He feels accused, but doesn't panic. He feels tension, but doesn't collapse. That control is earned through discipline. Through self-awareness. Through internal work most men avoid. The moment you stop needing to win. Here's when everything changes. When you stop needing to win arguments. When you stop needing her to admit you're right. When you stop needing to correct every misunderstanding. Because you understand. Time reveals character better than arguments do. If you consistently show up with integrity, calm, and aligned actions, eventually, either she trusts you, or she leaves. Both outcomes are clarity. And intelligent men value clarity over emotional chaos. A personal lesson. There was a time in my life when I argued every point. If she misunderstood me, I corrected it immediately. If she doubted me, I defended thoroughly. I thought that meant I cared. In reality, it meant I was afraid. Afraid to be seen as wrong. Afraid to be rejected. Afraid to lose control. The day I stopped reacting, the dynamic shifted. Not because I became indifferent, but because I became stable. And stability commands respect without demanding it. Final reflection of Part 2. Women test emotional strength not through compliments, but through pressure. The question is never, are you right? The question is, are you steady? Intelligent men understand this. They don't silence women. They silence their own impulsive reactions. They don't avoid communication. They avoid emotional chaos. Because a man who cannot regulate himself cannot lead anything. Not a relationship. Not a family. Not even his own life. And in a world full of reactive men, the one who remains centered under fire becomes rare. Part 3. How over-explaining kills attraction over time. From respect to emotional imbalance. There is something painful most men only realize after it's too late. Attraction rarely dies in one dramatic moment. It fades quietly. Not because you weren't good enough. Not because you didn't care enough. But because somewhere along the way, you started explaining too much. And every explanation chipped away at your edge. Attraction is built on emotional certainty. Attraction is not built on perfection. It is built on certainty. A woman may disagree with you. She may challenge you. She may even get frustrated. But if she senses that you are grounded in who you are, she relaxes. The moment you begin over-explaining, something subtle shifts. Instead of feeling your presence, she starts feeling your insecurity. And insecurity, even when dressed in logic, changes the polarity. The invisible shift in power. Here is what most men never notice. When you over-explain, you slowly move into a submissive emotional position. Not submissive in behavior. Submissive in frame. Frame is psychological positioning. Who is reacting? Who is steady? Who is trying to convince? If you are trying to convince, you are no longer leading the emotional dynamic. You are negotiating your value. And value that needs negotiation is perceived as unstable. The problem with, but let me explain. Watch how this pattern unfolds. She says, I feel like you're distant. Instead of listening, you respond, that's not true. Let me explain why you're wrong. Now you're no longer connected. You're correcting. She feels unheard. You feel misunderstood. So you explain more. She resists more. You push harder. And suddenly, it's no longer about distance. It's about tension. Over time, this cycle erodes attraction. Because attraction thrives on polarity, not debate. Emotional debate destroys masculine energy. Masculine energy is directional. It is decisive. It is stable. It is calm under pressure. When you engage in long emotional debates, you shift into reactive energy. You try to fix feelings with arguments. But feelings are not persuaded by data. They are regulated by presence. A woman doesn't feel safe because you presented a logical defense. She feels safe because your nervous system remains grounded. And that grounding cannot coexist with frantic explanation. Why mystery fades when you justify everything? There is a quiet power in restraint. When you don't explain every detail of your thoughts, your schedule, your decisions, you retain depth. But when you narrate everything, justify everything, defend every small move, you remove the mystery. And mystery fuels attraction. Mystery does not mean secrecy. It means emotional composure. It means you are not scrambling to be understood. It means you trust that your character speaks over time. The slow loss of respect. Respect is fragile. Not because women are unreasonable, but because respect is tied to perception of strength. If she sees that small emotional pressure makes you overtalk, she unconsciously registers. He needs reassurance. And when a woman feels that you need reassurance from her, the polarity shifts. She moves slightly into the stronger emotional role. You move slightly into the seeking role. And attraction begins to dilute. Not instantly. Gradually. Like water leaking from a glass. The danger of seeking emotional validation. Let's go deeper. Why do men over-explain? Because they want to be understood. Why do they want to be understood so badly? Because they equate being misunderstood with rejection. So they fight misunderstanding as if it's abandonment. But here is the truth mature men accept. Not being fully understood is part of life. You will not always be interpreted correctly. And that is okay. When you can tolerate being misunderstood calmly, you display emotional independence. And emotional independence is deeply attractive. The woman's perspective, that most men miss. Imagine being with a man who constantly explains himself. Every disagreement becomes a lecture. Every emotional moment becomes a debate. Every misunderstanding becomes a courtroom argument. At first, she may see it as effort. But over time, it feels like instability. Because he cannot sit in tension without defending. He cannot hold silence. He cannot let space exist. And a man who cannot tolerate space cannot create depth. The power of contained words. There is a principle I learned the hard way. Speak once. Speak calmly. Then let it stand. If you have to repeat yourself 5 times, you are no longer clarifying. You are convincing. And convincing weakens presence. If she disagrees after you've expressed yourself clearly, you don't escalate. You observe. You evaluate. You ask yourself, is this a communication issue, or a compatibility issue? Intelligent men know the difference. Attraction thrives on emotional tension, not emotional chaos. There is healthy tension in relationships. Difference in perspective. Different temperaments. Different emotional rhythms. That tension creates spark. But when tension becomes defensive back and forth, it turns into chaos. And chaos destroys attraction. The man who remains grounded during tension transforms it into polarity. The man who reacts turns it into instability. When you stop explaining, something changes. Here's what happened when I changed my approach. I stopped arguing minor misinterpretations. I clarified once. Then I let silence do its work. If she felt insecure, I didn't rush to overprove. If she questioned me, I didn't panic. I stayed steady. And something surprising occurred. She began investing more effort in understanding me. Because now, understanding was not handed to her in frantic explanations. It required observation. And observation increases intrigue. This is not emotional neglect. Let's be clear. This is not about emotional neglect. You still communicate. You still listen. You still care. But you do not overperform. You do not over-justify. You do not over-defend. You trust that consistent action over time outweighs verbal reassurance. Because it does. Words are temporary. Patterns are permanent. The silent upgrade. When a man stops over-explaining, he upgrades internally. He becomes less reactive, less anxious, less dependent on immediate validation. That internal shift is visible. Women feel it. They may not articulate it, but they feel. He is solid. And solidity is rare. Especially in a world of men who collapse under minor emotional pressure. The hardest lesson. Here's the truth most men resist. If a woman loses attraction because you stopped over-explaining, she was never attracted to your strength. She was attracted to your availability for emotional control. And that dynamic is unsustainable. Healthy attraction grows when both people respect each other's emotional autonomy. Not when one constantly reassures the other into stability. Final reflection of Part 3. Over-explaining does not kill attraction instantly. It erodes it quietly. It shifts the emotional frame. It weakens polarity. It replaces certainty with negotiation. Intelligent men understand. You do not maintain attraction by convincing. You maintain attraction by being grounded. By speaking less but meaning more. By staying steady when emotions fluctuate. Because in the end, a woman may challenge your words. But she will always respond to your energy. And energy does not lie. There are things in love, only when we take a step back, sit down quietly, can we truly understand. I share these stories not to teach you how to love, but so that you can find the answers for yourself. If what you just heard touches your heart, please click like as a way to spread this positive energy to more people. And remember to click subscribe, because there are many profound perspectives on love waiting for you in the next videos. Now, let's continue the remaining journey together, because the most precious things are sometimes at the end. Part 4. The difference between ego silence and Stoic strength. When a man should walk away instead of explaining. There is a thin line between confidence and arrogance. Between composure and emotional shutdown. Between strength and wounded pride. Many men hear the idea. Don't explain yourself. And they turn it into, I don't owe anyone anything. That's not strength. That's ego disguised as masculinity. And women can feel the difference immediately. Ego silence is defensive. Ego silence sounds like, I won't explain because I refuse to be questioned. It carries tension. It carries resentment. It carries subtle anger. It's the silence of someone trying to win. It's rigid. Cold. Unreachable. That kind of silence does not create attraction. It creates emotional distance. Stoic strength is grounded. Stoic silence sounds like, I've already expressed myself clearly. I don't need to repeat it. It's calm. Relaxed. Open, but firm. The difference is internal. One comes from fear of losing control. The other comes from control already established. A Stoic man does not withhold communication. He simply refuses to overextend himself emotionally. The inner check every man must make. Before choosing silence, ask yourself: am I calm, or am I triggered? If you feel tight in your chest, if your jaw is clenched, if you're silent because you're angry, that's ego. But if you feel steady, breathing slow, mind clear, that's strength. The external behavior may look similar, but internally, they are worlds apart. And women respond to internal state, not just external words. When you should clarify. There are moments when explanation is maturity. If you genuinely hurt her. If there was a misunderstanding caused by poor communication. If your silence is creating confusion instead of stability. A Stoic man does not hide behind pride. He takes responsibility when appropriate. He can say, "You're right. I handled that poorly." Without collapsing. Without over-defending. Without self-justifying for 20 minutes. Ownership increases respect. Defensiveness reduces it. When you should stop explaining. Now here is the critical part. If you've clarified calmly. If you've explained once clearly. If you've aligned your actions consistently. And she continues to question your integrity repeatedly. Stop explaining. Because at that point, the issue is no longer misunderstanding. It's mistrust. And mistrust cannot be solved through repetition. It can only be solved through alignment, or separation. The moment a man must consider walking away. This is the part most men avoid. If you are constantly required to defend your character. If every decision turns into interrogation. If your integrity is repeatedly doubted. You must ask yourself. Is this partnership built on respect? A relationship should challenge you. But it should not require constant justification of your existence. Walking away is not weakness. Sometimes it is the ultimate form of self-respect. Not dramatic exit. Not angry shutdown. Just calm withdrawal from misalignment. The psychology of staying too long. Many men stay in defensive dynamics because of attachment. They think, if I just explain better, she'll finally understand. But understanding forced through pressure is not genuine understanding. It's exhaustion. And exhaustion breeds resentment. Resentment kills love faster than conflict ever could. The intelligent man recognizes patterns early. He doesn't wait until bitterness replaces affection. Confidence is quiet, arrogance is loud. Here's a subtle truth. Arrogant men talk about how they don't explain themselves. Confident men simply don't need to. Arrogance seeks superiority. Confidence seeks stability. Arrogance wants to dominate the argument. Confidence doesn't need to argue. And women instinctively respect the latter. Not because it's intimidating. But because it's secure. Emotional availability without emotional weakness. Some men swing too far. They stop explaining, and they stop expressing altogether. They become emotionally unavailable. Detached. Unreachable. That is not Stoicism. True Stoicism is emotional regulation, not emotional suppression. You still communicate. You still show care. You still share vision. But you do not beg to be understood. You do not chase validation. You do not collapse under accusation. That balance is rare. And rarity creates attraction. The strength of saying less. There is something powerful about concise communication. I've explained my position. I understand your feelings. I stand by my decision. Then silence. No emotional drama. No defensive speech. No long emotional essays. The more composed you are, the more weight your words carry. And weight creates gravity. Gravity creates attraction. When walking away is the final explanation. Sometimes the most powerful explanation is departure. Not as punishment. Not as manipulation. But as alignment. If a woman repeatedly disrespects your boundaries, questions your integrity, or thrives on emotional chaos, your calm exit says more than any argument ever could. You do not threaten. You do not announce dramatically. You simply choose peace. And peace is power. The mature masculine frame. A mature man understands three things. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. Not every emotional reaction deserves response. Not every relationship deserves continuation. These are hard truths. But once internalized, you stop operating from fear. You operate from choice. And choice changes everything. The final internal shift. When you truly understand this principle, something subtle happens inside you. You no longer feel the urge to defend your image. You focus on your character instead. Image is what people think. Character is what you consistently do. When you invest in character, image eventually aligns. And if someone still misjudges you, you let them. Because you know who you are. And self-knowledge is immovable. Final reflection of Part 4. There is power in silence. But only when it is rooted in clarity. There is strength in not explaining. But only when it is supported by integrity. And there is dignity in walking away. But only when it is calm. Intelligent men do not avoid explanation because they are cold. They avoid unnecessary explanation because they are centered. They clarify when needed. They stand firm when tested. And they leave when respect disappears. That is not ego. That is emotional sovereignty. Part 5. The ultimate principle: build a life that doesn't need defense. Trust, integrity, and the calm power of a grounded man. Let me tell you the final truth. Intelligent men don't avoid explaining themselves because they want control. They avoid unnecessary defense because their life already speaks for them. And when your life speaks, your mouth works less. The real reason strong men don't over-explain. It's not strategy. It's not manipulation. It's not game. It's alignment. When your words match your actions. When your actions match your values. When your values match your long-term direction. There is nothing to defend. Defense only becomes necessary when there is internal contradiction. If you are inconsistent, you explain. If you are unsure, you justify. If you are misaligned, you panic. But when you are aligned, you remain calm. And calm men rarely feel cornered. Trust is built through pattern, not persuasion. Most men try to build trust through reassurance. I promise. Believe me. I would never. But trust does not grow from promises. It grows from patterns. If you consistently show up when you say you will, keep your word, maintain emotional stability, live with discipline, you won't need to argue your integrity. It becomes observable. And observation is stronger than explanation. The long-term dynamic. In the beginning of relationships, there is curiosity. In the middle, there are tests. In the long term, There is pattern recognition. A woman eventually stops listening to what you say. She studies what you do. If you remain consistent, her nervous system relaxes. If you remain reactive, her nervous system stays alert. Over time, a grounded man creates peace. And peace is deeply attractive in long-term partnership. Not excitement. Not drama. Peace. The masculine burden most men avoid. Here is the uncomfortable reality. As a man, you are often the emotional stabilizer in the relationship. Not because women are weak, but because masculine energy is naturally directional and grounding. If both partners collapse under emotion, there is chaos. If one partner remains centered, there is balance. Intelligent men accept this responsibility. They train themselves internally. Through discipline. Through self-reflection. Through emotional regulation. Not for dominance, but for stability. The power of being misunderstood temporarily. Here is a maturity level most men never reach. The ability to tolerate temporary misunderstanding. Without rushing to fix perception. Without scrambling to clarify every detail. Without chasing immediate approval. Because they understand. If someone truly wants to understand you, they will observe. And if they don't, explaining will not force it. When you are secure in your identity, misunderstanding does not feel like danger. It feels like delay. And delay is tolerable. Emotional sovereignty. Emotional sovereignty means you do not allow someone else's temporary feelings to dictate your internal stability. She may feel insecure one day. She may feel doubtful another day. She may feel emotional, stressed, reactive. You can listen. You can care. You can respond calmly. But you do not absorb her turbulence. You remain anchored. An anchored man is rare. And rarity creates value. When explanation is no longer needed. At a certain level of maturity, your lifestyle eliminates suspicion. Your routine eliminates doubt. Your discipline eliminates instability. You don't need to say, "I'm loyal." Your boundaries show it. You don't need to say, "I'm focused." Your schedule shows it. You don't need to say, "I'm emotionally strong." Your reactions show it. And reactions are always more honest than speeches. The ultimate attraction shift. There is a moment in a woman's perception of a man when something changes. She stops trying to push him emotionally. Because she realizes he does not move easily. Not cold. Not rigid. Stable. That stability does not intimidate her. It relaxes her. Because now she knows. No matter what mood she wakes up in, he will not collapse. No matter what stress life brings, he will not spiral. That creates deep trust. And deep trust sustains love longer than chemistry ever could. The final test of maturity. Here is the final evolution. You no longer argue to protect your image. You only speak to maintain clarity. You no longer defend your ego. You protect your character. You no longer chase being understood. You focus on being consistent. And if someone walks away because you refuse to over-explain, you let them. Because a woman aligned with your energy will not require constant proof of it. The quiet confidence of a grounded man. When you reach this level, you become quieter. Not withdrawn. Focused. Not distant. Centered. You choose your words carefully. You don't raise your voice easily. You don't rush to justify. You don't crumble under doubt. And your calm becomes contagious. In arguments, you slow things down. In tension, you breathe deeper. In misunderstanding, you clarify once. Then you return to your purpose. Because your purpose is bigger than emotional turbulence. The final truth. Why don't intelligent men constantly explain themselves to women? Because they have already explained themselves to life. Through discipline. Through action. Through consistency. Through self-mastery. They understand something simple. If you live with integrity, time becomes your advocate. And time never argues loudly. It proves quietly. Closing reflection. A boy argues. A reactive man defends. A wounded man withdraws. But a grounded man, he stands firm. He listens without collapsing. He speaks without begging. He walks away without anger. And he loves without losing himself. That is Stoic love. Not coldness. Not indifference. But controlled strength. In a world of emotional noise, the man who remains steady does not need to shout to be respected. He simply stands. And that is enough. Conclusion. The man who does not need to defend himself. In the end, this was never about refusing to explain. It was about refusing to abandon yourself. Intelligent men do not avoid explanation because they are cold, arrogant, or emotionally distant. They avoid unnecessary defense because they understand a fundamental truth. A man who lives in alignment does not need constant validation. When your words match your actions. When your actions reflect your values. When your values are rooted in discipline and self-respect. There is very little left to argue. Over-explaining is often the language of fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being rejected. Fear of losing connection. But a grounded man understands that real connection is not built through frantic reassurance. It is built through stability. He listens. He clarifies when necessary. He takes responsibility when he is wrong. But he does not beg to be believed. He does not fight to control perception. He does not exhaust himself trying to win emotional trials. Because he knows something deeper. Trust is built slowly. Respect is observed quietly. And integrity speaks over time. In love, as in life, the strongest position is not dominance, it is steadiness. And the man who can remain calm when questioned, centered when challenged, and dignified when misunderstood, is the man who never truly needs to defend himself. Because his character already does. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video. I hope you have found useful lessons about love and relationships. If you find this video useful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. I really appreciate your support and will continue to bring valuable content in the next videos. Please continue to accompany me on my journey to learn about love and relationships. See you again and wish you happiness.